For decades, Toys R Us wasn't just a store, it was a childhood ritual. And then it collapsed. And everyone thought the explanation was simple. Amazon had won. But that story misses the real lesson. By the time people noticed the problem, it was already too late. In the end, even nostalgia couldn't save Toys R Us because it was broken before e-commerce finished the job. The thing that made Toys R Us possible is the same thing that killed it. To understand why Toys R Us failed, you first have to understand just how dominant it was. This wasn't a struggling retailer limping along. Toys R Us was a category killer. It offered massive selection, far more than department stores. Toy brands needed shelf space there to survive. Its scale gave it leverage with suppliers, logistics advantages, and pricing power. And most importantly, it was a destination, not a convenience stop. If you were a kid anytime through the 70s through the early 2010s, going to Toys R Us felt special. Branded sections from companies like Lego, Barbie, and Hot Wheels turned shopping into an experience. It didn't feel like a store, it felt like a playground. At its peak, Toys R Us controlled roughly 25% of the US toy market, generated nearly $14 billion in annual revenue, and operated over 1,000 stores worldwide, including a massive multi-story flagship in Times Square with an indoor Ferris wheel. So, what changed? Most people assume Toys R Us died because of e-commerce, or because Amazon was cheaper and more convenient. E-commerce did matter, but it wasn't the real problem. The real problem was how Toys R Us was financed. Retail capital is expensive, stores needed constant reinvestment, technology changes, and customer expectations shift. And for decades, Toys R Us funded its growth with debt. Toys R Us used debt to open new locations across North America and beyond, and for a long time, it worked. But in 2005, everything changed. A private equity buyout loaded the company with billions in new debt, not to improve the business, but to extract returns. Suddenly, Toys R Us wasn't optimized for adaptation, it was optimized for cash flow, servicing interest payments. Toys R Us didn't lose money because it couldn't compete, it lost freedom because it couldn't invest. Debt didn't kill the company overnight, it quietly removed flexibility year by year. While Toys R Us was constrained, the retail world was changing fast. E-commerce rewired consumer expectations. Price transparency became instant. Convenience mattered more than destination shopping. Availability became assumed and ultimately not impressive. Amazon didn't just sell toys, it trained customers to expect frictionless fulfillment. Toys R Us saw this coming. Leadership wasn't blind. The problem wasn't awareness. The problem was timing and the lack of capital to respond meaningfully. This is where adaptation mattered, and ultimately this is where debt removed the option. Once the pressure mounted, Toys R Us faced a set of bad choices. They could invest heavily in e-commerce, but that required cash they didn't have. They could modernize stores, which already was on thin margins. They could cut costs, but that may risk brand erosion and create a worse customer experience. Or they could do nothing and decline slowly. None of these options were irrational, so they did what many constrained companies do: a little bit of everything. Each decision made sense in isolation, but together they guaranteed decline. The stores stagnated, the online experience lacked, customer perception slipped, And once vendors began losing confidence, the spiral accelerated. This wasn't bad leadership. It was leadership operating inside a shrinking box. By the mid-2010s, the damage was visible. Foot traffic declined, suppliers tightened terms, and liquidity dried up. In 2017, Toys R Us filed for bankruptcy, and soon after that, stores began closing en masse. But the collapse wasn't sudden, it was simply the visible end of a long-running constraint. The lesson here isn't about toys, it's about capital structure. Many companies don't fail because demand disappears, they fail because success locks in the wrong incentives. They look profitable, they look stable, but underneath, they're brittle. Any business that trades long-term flexibility for short-term financial engineering is making the same bet Toys R Us made. And eventually, the world changes. The scariest part isn't that Toys R Us died, it's how many companies are still following that same path.